We have formed a quorum. I now call the meeting to order. Item number 1, confirmation of minutes. Is paper CB bracket 4363-1314. The draft minutes were sent to members on the 9th of December. So far, the Secretary hasn't received any proposed amendment from members. If there's nothing to propose here, I would confirm the minutes. Okay, thank you. Item 2, information papers issued by the Secretariat since the last meeting. The details can be found on the agenda. Item number 3, items for discussion. For the next meeting to be held on the 18th of March 2014, Monday at from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. I've discussed this matter with the Deputy Chairman. As the government hasn't proposed any item for discussion, we would like to propose the following two. And that is the issue related to the governance and regulation of the self-financing post-secondary sector. And the second item is measures to address issues arising from the drop in secondary student population. Well, I believe many members will be interested in speaking on these two items, so we need sufficient time for discussion. So in that regard, I propose only two items for the 2-hour regular meeting. For the next meeting, we only propose two items. Dr. Helena Wong, well, you are wise in deciding for only two items. We have to spend time on the governance and regulation of the self-financing post-secondary sector. You know, an institution operated by the Tonghua Groups of Hospital has been exposed by the media to be involved in a scandal involving tendering matters. So maybe we should invite deputations, relevant organizations to come to speak with us. The Education Bureau is very evasive. It has been trying to avoid facing off with the relevant issues directly. Yes, so you propose deputations. Mr. Chan Chi-chin, I have a question. On the 24th of January, I wrote to you with regard to an international school purportedly discriminating against homosexuals. Have you received the letter? Are you going to deal with it or not? We'll refer your letter to the administration. We await a reply from the administration. We cannot take it up immediately. We have to wait for a reply from the administration first. Thank you. Deputy Chairman, with regard to the matter referred to by Dr. Helena Wong, and whether we should talk about the post-secondary education ordinance, I hope, and I think we should invite the Tonghua Groups of Hospital to send someone to talk to us. All right, so we decide to invite deputations. As for the list of invitation, we would come to that in due course. Next item, progress of work of the Committee on Free Kindergarten Education. At this point, I think it's time to invite the officials to join us. And while we're waiting for them to be seated, please raise your hands if you want to speak. Please hold steady. The Secretary would jot down your names.
寫返個名落去，寫返。阿坡，謝偉俊。 我讀一讀。
I'll read out, Secretary for Education, please allow a minute for me to read out the names. Ms. Wong Kok Heng, Mr. Chair Wai Chin, Ms. Sid Ho, Mr. Leung Yu Chong, Ms. Paul Jie. In accordance with 83A of our Rules of Procedure, Rule 83A, if members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to the item under discussion, please declare the interest before you speak. For this item, we have been given a paper CP 4362/13, or it's a CP 4362/1314(02). Actually, we have written to the chairman of the Committee on Free Kindergarten Education on the 17th of January for inviting the chairman to attend our meeting. And we have been informed by the Bureau that the chairman is out of town and cannot attend today's meeting. So over to you, Mr. Ng, for your introduction. Thank you, Chairman. It's the beginning of the Year of the Horse, so I wish everyone a happy Lunar New Year. One of the important tasks for the current administration is to extend the duration of free and universal education by 3 years to kindergarten education. And earlier on, we set up a subcommittee to look into the matters, and the committee will be tasked to look into the relevant matters and come up with recommendations in 2015. The committee and the five subcommittee have held more than 30 meetings so far. In December 2013, we provided a progress report in which you can find the details of the deliberations. So I won't repeat the points already made. A number of short-term measures have been proposed to help the kindergarten sector to face the current challenges. After careful consideration of the committee's recommendations, those are accepted. We understand the short-term recommendations may not be able to meet all the needs of the kindergarten sector, but we believe these are feasible and can be implemented easily. So before we have a long-term kindergarten education measures implemented, these would this will allow us to cope with the transitional period. First, I want to highlight providing additional subsidy for kindergartens and parents. In accordance with the policies announced in the policy address, we intend to increase the value of the pre-primary education voucher by $2,500 per year, so as to help alleviate the financial burden of kindergartens, and also to meet the expenditure and other outgoings of kindergartens. We also plan to lift the fee remission under the Kindergarten and Child Care Center fee remission scheme from the weighted average fees of pre-primary education voucher scheme kindergartens to the 75th percentile of the school fees of the respective kindergartens to provide greater assistance to needy families in assisting them gaining access to quality KG education. Second, I want to talk about improving the KG kindergarten admission arrangements. It was a matter of concern last year because of some incidents. We have come up with new measures to ensure that every KG student would only take up one offer. And there are expectations that we should further improve upon the necessary K1 classes arrangements. And therefore, the Free KG Education Committee has asked us to improve the arrangements before 2015. We have listened to the views of stakeholders, including the school sponsors, principals or organizations, and parents' organizations. Members' views are most welcome. In our meetings with the kindergarten sector, we have come to understand that they support the measures in the made, and they have also offered views on admission arrangements. For example, allowing people to download admission forms without any limit, and whether this would add to their burden of processing. And also there should be more refined arrangements to release information and access to the publications. We intend to iron out the details in March and April this year, and through wide publicity, making use of various channels, will inform the affected parents. We believe the kindergartens would work with us in a concerted effort to come up with a win-win situation for all. Since this is the first time we'd implement these special arrangements, we would maintain close liaison with the kindergartens. We expect the committee to submit a final report to the Bureau in 2015, and the government would tie in with the efforts and implement the policy on free kindergarten education as soon as practicable. My colleagues and I are happy to listen to your views and take your questions. Two more members have indicated interest to speak, so altogether 13.
5分結束。
The first agenda item has to be finished by 5:20, so 3 minutes each, including questions and answers. Wong Kok-hing, I have 2 questions. The FTU welcomes the government's proposal to increase the voucher subsidy in the next 2 academic years, and also to lift the fee remission scheme upper limit. Now, as for the 15-year free education, when will that? How is the timetable? And also, 1 place per child proposal. We welcome that, and we know that the government has done a lot on this. Now, only some 700 non-profit making KGs are under that voucher scheme. As for private independent KGs, they are not entitled to the scheme. So if the families are relatively rich, they have more choices, or else they would just have only 1 choice. So don't you think that this is unfair? 2 questions here. Secretary, when will free 15-year education be implemented? The first question. Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Wong. As we said before, I hope that the committee can present the proposals in 2015 as scheduled, and thereafter the administration will review the various aspects as soon as we can. And I believe that there will be an open consultation and views will be gauged. And we will come back to this panel to collect views from you as well. So that's the timetable. But of course, we hope that the recommendations, most of them, will get your support so that we can implement the new system as smoothly as possible. And we will try to handle divergent views as much as we can. So this is a timetable that we're talking about. Some people ask whether it will be done before 2017. Well, it's subjective. Well, personally, I hope that that can be done, but we have to look at the facts or the circumstances. 1 place per child. For those KGs not under the voucher scheme, i.e. private KGs, based on the Taipo and North District experience, some of them actually have implemented the 6 measures that we proposed, and they've proved effective. So even though they are not participating in the voucher scheme, I suggest that we can sit down together with them and talk to them, and we can use it by way of a registration letter. I think that can help PI, private independent KGs in the administration, and I think that can bring benefits to the administration. So we hope to discuss with them in more detail. Next one, Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome that the committee, before submitting its final report in 2015, present some proposals on how to improve KG admission. you proposed one place per child, and that is packed to the voucher scheme. Do we have any statistics on KG students who are covered by voucher and those who are not? Does it mean that parents who are not using the voucher can disregard what you're proposing, i.e. they can take up more than one place on a long-term basis? Now, second thing, the application forms can be downloaded from the web. Does it mean that there will not be a limit on the number of application forms, i.e. people don't have to queue up to get an application form? Thirdly, Secretary, now for such an arrangement for those popular KGs, do you think the measures proposed can improve the situation, i.e. the parents will not have to suffer per se in obtaining the application forms? Secretary, please. I'll tackle the second and third questions first, and then I will defer to Mrs. Yip to take the first question. On the online application forms, and actually many KGs are already doing that, and they found that it's proved effective. Now, parents told us that they welcome such an arrangement because they don't want to queue up, either because it's hard for them. So if we do that, then that will be good to both the schools and the parents, and it can cut down a lot of administrative work. Parents don't have to queue up again. Thirdly, we think that the overall arrangement is satisfactory, and there has been positive feedback. First question, Mrs. Yip. Voucher scheme, parents not using the voucher scheme, what will happen to them? Now, put simply, students covered under the voucher scheme take up around 80% of all KG students in Hong Kong. Now, as for this one place per child proposal, that is implemented on a school basis. So in the voucher KGs, we will ask them to follow our measure. Now, so students enrolling in these voucher KGs, and they can go and get the certificate as soon as they can. And for those who are not getting the certificate, they will get a registration letter. And we will check that the registration letters don't duplicate the certificates, and that goes to certify that the students are enrolling in a certain KG. So for those non-voucher KGs, we also welcome them to join the scheme, and we will issue them with registration letters. Dr. Helena Wong, we are very concerned about the progress on proposal to implement 15-year free education, but then I don't see the administration is attaching importance to an issue, and that is for families whose both parents are working, and they need a whole day KG for their kids. So in the plan for 15-year free KG education, in terms of the support measures and the resources, does the administration have any plan to support these families? A child taking a half-day classes or whole-day classes may differ very much in terms of the demand on resources. Now, childcare services in Hong Kong are not satisfactory, so whole-day classes can help a lot with the families in which both parents are working. So my question for the Secretary is, what is your plan and policies towards whole-day KGs? Thank you. Dr. Wong, I think this is a very, very important issue. Around 30% of the KGs are whole-day KGs. So that means that there is an actual need for parents to have their kids studying in whole-day KGs. We understand that. Now, for this committee and the subcommittee under it, we are studying the relevant issue. Now, Now, what should be the objective for half-day and whole-day classes ranging from 4 to 8 hours in duration? What should be the education objective and so on? They have to study that. Now, as for manpower, academic qualifications of their teachers, do they differ for both types of classes? Because they involve different teaching methods and different teaching curriculum. So the committee is proceeding full steam in studying this issue. Second, even for such short-term such short-term measures, we are also attaching importance to this point. Now, for this whole day KG, their subsidy model is very different from that of half-day KG. Apart from tuition fees, there is also a difference in terms of the recurrent subsidy from the government. For example, a rental reimbursement and so on. So whole-day schools do get rental reimbursement from the administration. So their operating costs are very different from half-day KGs. Thirdly, as for manpower deployment, the work hours for the teachers are different. So that will be part of this study. So under the short-term measures, KGs will be given a higher subsidy, then that will help in raising teachers' salaries. Next one, Dr. Kenneth Chen. Thank you, Chairman. The Secretary told us that they've held many meetings. They have listened to different views. And there are short-term measures strengthening the voucher scheme, and on a long-term basis, they will study also the qualifications of teachers, rental, and so on. And also, they are they attended some international forums, and they hosted some local ones as well. So my question for the Secretary is this: when we talk about free 15-year free 15-year education. Now, you are proposing some piecemeal short-term measures. Do you think these short-term measures will help you achieve our long-term vision of providing free 15-year education? Would you be heading towards, say, the present subsidy model for primary school and secondary schools? That's my first question. Second question is about whole-day KGs. On the 19th of January, I attended a meeting in which over 1,000 teachers and parents were here. If the Secretary were here, you would know that they are very dissatisfied with the progress of work of the committee. Because for the voucher scheme, it doesn't make any difference in terms of makes any distinction between students studying whole day or half day classes. So that's not good enough. So in the upcoming budget, would there be room for adjusting the voucher subsidy targeting different KGs, i.e. whole day and half day KGs? Secretary, there are 2 points here. We have the committee and then 5 subcommittees. We aim to comprehensively review the operation of the sector. Apart from teaching and care, in terms of our objectives, what kind of operation model and what kind of subsidy model should be appropriate? That is also under our study. And we should also forge a consensus on what we mean by free education. The overriding principle is that for KG education and care, what kind of objectives should be achieved and how we achieve them. So this is what is important in terms of 15-year free education. Now, in a long-term basis, should we be modeling after the subsidy mode for primary and secondary schools? Well, there has been a lot of discussions on that, and we'll have to make further analysis. Now, last time, some international experts offered different views, so we would take them into account. We talked about whole day, half day classes, and different parents and teachers have the different demands. Some parents need whole day and some others need half day classes. So we are talking about a wide spectrum of service targets. We have to conduct more in-depth analysis. What's important is we must realize that there are different demands among different groups. So I think the Secretary should study allowing some flexibility for the PEVS scheme. Mr. Gary Fan. I want to talk about also whole day KGs. I think this whole day KGs are a special characteristic of Hong Kong. It can help families where both parents are working, and then it can also achieve various objectives in terms of education and care for the children. So has the government made any assessment on the 246 whole day KGs in Hong Kong, if they can be fully subsidized? What will be the resources or subsidy amount needed, and what is the ratio of it in terms of the overall education spending? Second question is that I hope that the chairman can attend to this. We have received a petition letter from the concerned group of parents on whole day KGs, and we wanted to follow up on the CE's election manifesto on providing free KG education. And I want they asked whether a special subcommittee should be established under this panel to specifically follow up on free KG education. So should we be adding a subcommittee under this education panel to attend specifically to the issue of free KG education? Secretary. Whole day KGs have its value, and they have served a particular group of parents. So perhaps I'll defer to Mrs. Yip to tackle the question about the manpower.
Or under the Committee on Free KG Education, there are 3 working groups looking at various matters. One of them is looking at the subvention model. So we have a look at the different modes of operation, half-day, whole day, the curriculum, the manpower, and so on and so forth, and what should be done to address their different needs, to make sure that the service quality meets parents' aspirations. Different social groups, parents, pupils, and other groups have different needs. Apart from the common core needs, should we be providing some additional subsidies, for example, to those with financial needs, special financial needs, or to families with working parents, or pupils with special education needs? So this is the working group looking at the subvention model. So we have to look at the needs, the manpower, and then the committee would come up with final recommendations in their report. I want to talk about SCN. It said that you pay particular attention to special education in the report, in the progress report, but there's no breakthrough in the mindset. According to the Education Bureau, this is something for the Social Welfare Department to address, and not for the Education Bureau to be handled as an education issue. Some child care experts, such as Professor Kwai of the Hong Kong Institute of Education, has commented that in Hong Kong there's a acute shortage of pre-primary education service for those with special education needs. In other countries, when a special education need child is identified, support will be provided as quickly as possible so that they may catch up. So it's important to invest in this. Especially, we should help those kids from low-income families. In Hong Kong, even for kids from the families with sufficient means, they find it difficult to find the necessary support services. And if the kids cannot catch up, they will face great learning difficulties when they progress to the primary levels. So they would lag far behind right from the very start if we don't help them. So can the Education Bureau take on this policy commitment instead of trying to pass it on to the Social Welfare Department and in actual delivery of support services? Well, according to your report, there's a shortage of trained personnel and teachers. Can you provide more resources to those KGs so that they would be able to employ a SEN coordinator, an expert with the right training to help their teachers in developing services in this field? Secretary, I'll defer to Mrs. Yip. Well, under the committee, there's a subcommittee looking at the needs of students with special educational needs to take care of the needs arising from learning abilities and special needs. We need to adopt an interdisciplinary approach. Especially, we need to get on board people with expertise in the healthcare sector. The Education Bureau cannot take care of all the needs. We should look at all the needs, social needs, educational needs, and health medical needs. Well, these are the members who have yet to speak. Deputy Chairman, Ms. Ho, Ms. Chen Yuqin, Mr. Paul Chair, Ms. Priscilla Leung, Ms. Wu Chi White, and Ms. James Tin, or Mr. Michael Tin. Deputy Secretary, we have high hopes about the work of the committee, but the committee chairman is not able to attend today's meeting. Has the Bureau encountered any difficulties in enlisting the attendance of the chairman? If the chairman cannot attend, have you asked other members of the committee to attend instead? A member has suggested that we should set up a subcommittee. I hope this can be realized as soon as possible so that we can monitor the progress made by the Bureau in this regard. And then for whole day KG education, from what I've heard, I'm not quite sure what's the role played by the Bureau. It's been said that they serve different social needs. And the committee has looked into this and there are divergent views. Can we get a clear answer succinctly? How does the Bureau assess the value of whole day KG education? Is there any substitute for this? And has the Bureau got any measures to help the development of a whole day kindergarten education if you think it is valuable? Well, the chairman of the committee attended every meeting of the committee, and the chairman is now out of town, as your chairman has told you. But notwithstanding his absence, he's very concerned about the deliberations and the progress here. As I've said, whole day kindergarten education serves certain particular purposes and meets certain needs. So we'll look at the manpower deployment, the qualification requirements, and what special measures should be implemented to make it possible. We are looking into all these possibilities. I don't think my question has been answered. You have not been able to tell us whether it's really valuable. And if it's valuable, you should come up with some short-term interim measures. As I've said, it certainly serves certain purposes. We have provided a one-off 150,000 to 250,000 grant. So this would certainly facilitate the development of whole-day education. I think the biggest recommendation is to continue to conduct further studies to look at different modes of subvention and then careful consideration of what should be done as the next step. And there will be a study on teacher qualifications and another study on financial subsidy to the families. And then the last paragraph talk about the continuation of collection of views. I don't think you should just tell us that there will be more studies. It's difficult for us to accept such a progress report. I want to raise 3 issues, matters of concern to many of us, and how much longer would it take for your studies. For example, the rental subsidy for KGs renting premises, and also the confirmation or the recognition of KG teacher qualifications in terms of pay adjustments and a formal mechanism on pay and salaries. And thirdly, the difference between half-day and whole-day kindergarten education and parents' expectations. So which way are you moving towards? Don't just shift the responsibility to the committee. Secretary, thank you, Ms. Ho. This is an interim report that we're talking about. The Bureau took the initiative to ask for an interim report, and you are invited to monitor the progress by referring to the interim report. This is not the final report. And premises can be an issue. For example, for those offering whole-day classes, they don't have any problems about rental subsidy. But for half-day kindergartens, they have different ways of leasing the premises. Some are shared with other organizations, some paid rent. The current way of subsidy would continue until the end of 2014. And we'll continue with the progress made in relation to teachers' qualifications. And different organizations would look into different issues. If we want to change the requirements on teachers' qualifications, we need to look at a number of aspects, including job evaluation and different modes of KG education do serve different purposes, and they are valuable in their own ways. Mr. Chen Chi-chin, I want to talk about rental subsidy because a large part of the operating expenses of kindergartens is about rent. In the report, it said that if a full subsidy is provided, the rent may go up. And that is to say, if the government picks up the bill, the landlord would just increase the rent indiscriminately. So are you going to introduce a rental subsidy with a cap? And what are you going to do to help those KGs who are unable to pay the high rents demanded by landlords? At the same time, some kindergartens also collect miscellaneous fees from parents. Are you going to regulate this so that we won't end up with no free education in the true sense? Mr. Siep? Well, our concept on rental subsidy is whether we should provide a full rental subsidy. We have reservation about this. If the government just pays whatever rent the KG pays to the landlord, we have reservations. As for miscellaneous fees, we have a requirement of a disclosure on the website in the publication on kindergartens offering places in Hong Kong, and this must not be mandatory. If you cannot provide full reimbursement, can you not provide a subsidy with a cap? But that's exactly the problem. How do we decide what the cap should be? In different areas, rental levels may be different, and they have different sizes. They may offer 6 classes or 12 classes. So that's why this committee is looking into ways to help the kindergartens to pay their rent. In some areas, rental has been increasing very rapidly, especially in the NT North. I hope the Bureau would come up with concrete measures to help them. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, Chairman, the Secretary has stressed that this is just an interim report. According to the interim report, questions are not going away, that you have more and more problems, and what you're doing is to have more and more studies. So where are we now? What has the committee handled? Well, what has been resolved and what has not been resolved? You have to tell us. You have a different subcommittees looking into different issues. It seems that we don't have anything to work on. If this is an initial report, it would be better because we would expect something better to come along. And now you're just looking into the feasibility of different issues. Your attendance today is a waste of time because there's no progress, no real progress.
Can you make an undertaking that you are determined to implement 15-year free education? You will submit a report in 2015, and then afterward, loads of work will have to follow. So can you make that undertaking? There are certain initiatives that will not be difficult to implement. For example, the salary scale for principals and teachers, that would not be too difficult. We have some examples to follow in the primary and secondary school sectors. So just at least show us that you have the determination to do something. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Leung. In fact, the interim reports contains many initiatives which have already been implemented. The short-term measures are here and which have been implemented after certain deliberations. One example is the adjustment of the voucher subsidy in the next 2 years. And same for emission arrangement. That is also another part which has been implemented. Now, these are not new initiatives. These are solutions to existing problems. This is something that you must face up to. I don't think the way you are saying it is correct. Second, as I said, we may have to give more time to really ascertain the complexities of the issues. Well, don't repeat the word complex. We all know about that. Next time, can you give us a more detailed report on the issues which have been deliberated on, what are the problems facing you, and so on? Can you do that? Yes, we'll try our best. Mr. Paul Chair, next. We have spent $8.5 billion from 2017 to 2012, but then, according to the audit the Public Accounts Committee's report, the results are far from satisfactory. Now, apart from this raise of subsidy in the voucher scheme of $2,500, apart from this measure, would you be considering instituting a mechanism to regularly review the subsidy level, and that should not be left to matters to be dealt with by the policy address? Can we regularize such a mechanism? Now, as for subsidy for professional development of teachers, up to now, certain principals and teachers haven't completed their qualifications. And in paragraph 9, you said that there are overseas study tours and tours to the mainland. Apart from these, what other measures are you implementing to help principals to achieve or teachers to achieve the relevant qualifications? As for rental subsidy, for subsidized KGs and non-subsidized KGs, they will be paying the same rent, and that is not fair. So would there be measures to help these two types of KGs so that a fair situation is guaranteed? Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your question. There are 2 points. In our discussions, we have already proposed for a subsidy rise of 28% over 2 years, from $16,800 to $20,000, so that we hope that the KGs can use that for rental or paying the teachers. So that's number one. Secondly, how many more principals and teachers who have not achieved the qualifications? But this is very much an ongoing process. Some have left and some have joined. So this is an ongoing process, and the sector hopes that we would continue with our support measures for the professional development. We've heard the views from the sector. Thirdly, rental subsidy. As I mentioned, whole day KGs don't have such a problem. And as for, say, the retrofitting works, they can apply for funding from the lotteries fund. Now, half-day KGs may have greater problem in this area, so we are trying to help them. 3 more members: Fernando Zhang, Wu Chi-White, Michael Tian. Dr. Fernando Zhang. In 2005, there was a merge of the childcare center and KGs, and then the voucher scheme was launched in 2007. For this whole day KGs, this is not fair to them. Well, the whole day KGs operate for more than 10 years. The EDB has thinks that KGs don't necessarily have to be whole day. But we have some 200 whole day KGs helping the low-income families. That has been a problem. In the course of merging the 2 types of institutions, and there is discrimination against the SEN students. Now, for kindergartens, they don't need to have integrated places, but for the childcare centers, they must take in SEN students as well. But there hasn't been a rise in the subsidy level over the years. And for kindergartens, they don't have to take care of SEN students, so they don't provide, say, speech therapist and clinical or education psychology services and so on. This has been a blind spot or a conflict over the years. In your interim report, nothing is mentioned about these. You said that you are studying it, but then you're just standardizing the subsidy level increase to $2,500, and that's not fair to whole day KGs. So in the future, would you be doing things to amend or ratify the situation? Now, for whole day KGs and KGs taking in SEN students, would you be providing special subsidy to them? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Zhang. There are different subsidy levels and models, and we have to be very careful in our analysis. We talk about standardized. Well, that is a basic principle. So if we're talking about different numbers and different modes of operation, then there are different mixed models of subsidy schemes. So we have to tailor-make to the needs of the different groups, and we'll take a look at their manpower needs, their operation model, and we'll try to adopt a targeted approach to address their needs. Well, I don't think the Secretary has given us an overall direction. I've been very clear in my question. There is a difference between half-day and whole-day KGs. And then for KGs, they don't take in SEN students. Please be brief in your answer, Secretary. When I talked about this when the committee was first established, and one of the subcommittee is studying and conducting a comprehensive review on SEN students, and some representatives of that subcommittee are providing us input in that regard. Next one, Mr. Michael Tian. About the review of 15-year free education. We are all concerned very about this. I wanted to ask 10 questions originally, and the time doesn't allow me to do so. I decided to ask one question that was raised by another member. I don't think that you need more study on that particular topic. Rental subsidy. There are two models of subsidy. One is you provide subsidy to all KGs. So you said that full subsidy is not possible because you are putting the money in the pockets of the landlords. Now, you said that you can't put a ceiling on the rental subsidy because KG is different in sizes. So you said, no, these two options are not non-starters. So what kind of option are you thinking about? When we talk about 15-year free education, the biggest difference is that the land is owned by the schools themselves. So how can you provide a subsidy to the premises which are owned by the private sector? Well, this is just a waste of time to really continue thinking about solutions to this problem. There is no solution at all unless the government pays and buys all the premises of the kindergartens from the landlords, and then you would be renting out to the KG operators on a stable rent, or else you won't be able to address the problem at all. Well, it will be just a waste of time in continuing to discuss this subject if you don't tackle the question I mentioned. Secretary, is there any way? Is it of any use continuing to study the subject? I understand that everyone wants a simple mechanism, a standardized mechanism, but we can't deny one fact. And actually, many of the premises are owned by the kindergartens, and some are privately owned, and some premises are operated by NGOs and so on. And even if we want to buy out the premises, that may not be possible in some cases. Well, Secretary, you haven't responded to my question. This is a dead knot. 1 + 1 can't equal to 3. Well, it's not as simple as just buying out all the land. Now, we have considered this because of the fluctuation student number. we may say share the KGs with some primary and secondary school premises, and there may be new designs in terms of upgrading the KGs and so on. I think, well, we should end the discussion of this item because it's already time. The next one is about the admission to UGC-funded undergraduate and research postgraduate programs. Those who wish to speak, please raise your hand. Perhaps I will invite the administration team to come in, please. For this item, the paper is CB4-362/1314-03. So please ask the administration team to come in as soon as possible, please. First of all, I'll ask Mr. Kevin Young, JP Undersecretary for Education, to brief us on the subject. In our discussion paper, we have laid out the admission to UGC-funded undergraduate and research postgraduate programs. I would like to highlight a few salient points. The UGC-funded institutions have a high autonomy in admitting students, and the government doesn't interfere in the process. And each institution will drop its own admission requirement based on fairness and merit-based selection to select the most deserving students. Local students should be entitled to equal opportunities no matter whether they are admitted through JUPAS or non-JUPAS to UGC-funded programs. From the figures in the past few years, over 80% students of UGC undergraduate programs come from local students after taking local exams. Now, for non-JUPAS students, they have possess other local qualifications, and the number of students holding non-local qualifications take up only 6 to 7% of all students. Now, as for whether non-local students will take up local students' resources, I don't think this is correct because non-local students are not going to compete directly with local students for undergraduate programs, and institutions will not reduce the number of local students in light of taking in non-local students. There were 40,890 local students, and for non-local students, they take up 13 to 40% of all places. And all additional direct costs were charged on non-local students. As for research postgraduate programs, the research postgraduates play an important role, and they engage in teaching and postgraduate researchers. And our aim is to attract good talents from all over the world to enhance the research level in Hong Kong. Now, the criterion is really their academic performance, and the countries where the postgraduates come from doesn't matter.
Whether local students would like to be enrolled in graduate schools depend on many factors which can differ from person to person. For local students who are interested in getting enrolled in local institutions in postgraduate programs, they have reasonable chance of doing so. Last year, 1,020 local students have submitted their applications, and 531 were admitted, or half of the applicants were admitted. And the local institutions have admitted fewer postgraduate students than what they can afford to offer. So they are not yet enrolled to full capacity. In other words, if outstanding local students apply to study in such a postgraduate programs, UGC-funded institutions still have the spare capacity to admit them on a merit basis. That's all for my introduction, Chairman. Members who would like to speak include the following three: Mr. Yu Chong, Dr. Fernando Jiang. Who else? Dr. Helena Wong, Dr. Kenneth Chan, Deputy Chairman, and Dr. Fernando Jiang. Or I can give these members more time if no other members would like to speak. I can't afford to give everyone 30 minutes. Who would like to speak in the first round? Who else would like to speak in the first round? There are only four. I would give them all the time available. 5 minutes for the questions and answers in the first round. Maybe you would like to ask follow-up questions after the answers. Dr. Helena Wong, for this paper is disappointing in that you are not addressing the issue of whether the resources are invested in local postgraduate students or non-locals. In the opening remark, the Undersecretary said that the institutions enjoy autonomy. The government doesn't interfere. Well, if this is the principle you have upheld, then please explain why for undergraduate programs you have a cap for non-local, and that is not more than 20%. Are you not interfering with the autonomy of the institutions by putting a cap? If you have this policy for undergraduates, you don't have a similar policy on postgraduates. And you haven't explained why. For research programs, where you have a cap for undergraduates, you have no cap for graduate schools. So you're not consistent. You cannot explain why. And also, even if you say you have a non-intervention policy, so what's happening now in the last paragraph of your paper, in the postgraduate programs, you are losing sight of the need to train up local talents. Only 22%, 531 postgraduate students in 2012-13 academic year. Non-locals, 1,876. 22% is accounted for by local postgraduate students. 77.9% non-locals. So do you still think that non-intervention is the best policy? And then gradually we will not even find 1 in 10 postgraduate students. These people may not remain in Hong Kong to work. So what are the postgraduate schools for? They get their education in Hong Kong, I mean the non-locals. Do they pay the same tuition fees? They also get the grant, $14,000 and so on and so forth. But they are not local people. Maybe I should pause here and get an answer first. It's said that we have this non-intervention policy. We are talking about the admission process and also the standards, the requirements for admission. But these are subsidized, subvented places. So there are requirements. As for the breakdown, the ratios between JUPAS and non-JUPAS admission is up to the institutions. Well, we do see a difference between postgraduates and undergraduates. undergraduates are more like senior students at a senior level, but postgraduates are also involved in research and teaching. In our paper, we have mentioned that postgraduate students are also playing a part in research and teaching. So they help the senior academic staff, the professors in doing some of this research, some of the teaching duties. Well, I was a graduate student myself. I don't need an explanation about that. We're talking about these subvented postgraduate programs. But even if you let's say, take an MPhil student, they are a student, they write their dissertations. The dissertations are vetted by the professors. If you want to get someone to help you with the research, you should hire research professors. Dr. Kenneth Chen, I would like to take up a point with the Undersecretary, and that is in relation to the non-local students in undergraduate programs. Well, I have been teaching in a university for 16 years. I know this policy was launched in an attempt to make our universities more diverse, to bring in variety, to make it more international in outlook, and therefore many universities have to change their medium of instructions. Instead of local language, Cantonese or Chinese, they would switch to English. This is what they call internationalization. And has the administration take a good look at whether the non-locals that we are meeting can help to achieve this objective? Have we been able to attract students from all around the world to be enrolled in our universities? Or are we admitting mostly students from the mainland? I don't want to be seen to be targeting a particular student population. So the question is, has something gone wrong about this policy of internationalization? Have we been able to achieve that? And in our council meeting, the Secretary answered an oral question, and that is for non-local quota. 4% come from the approved student numbers under the subvented quota. So you have been telling people that 16% are for non-locals, and then the 4% actually eats into the quota for locals. And now you have been trying to change this, the presentation. So what's the point of having a cap? If you want universities to admit more non-local students from around the world in their undergraduate programs, there should be no need to have this quota or sub-quota of 16% plus 4%. There are 20,000 of them who have to be enrolled on associate degree programs because they don't have any offers from universities. Looking at this 20%, for example, CUHK, business management programs, the ratio is more than 20%. Polytechnic University, business administration, some 30% are non-local students. Baptist U, the Chinese medicine, the same. Hong Kong U, almost 50% of those on business administration programs are non-locals. So you have a cap, overall cap, but for individual programs, the ratio can be very, very higher. Does it not call for a review now, Under Secretary? Let me talk about the question about 4%. Yes, among the 15,000 for non-local admission, 4% can come from the 15,000 funded number. But over the years, local students, local admissions have been very close to 15,000. So there's no question of local quota being taken up by non-locals. So perhaps there's a need to reassess whether we should we still have to spell out that 4% will come from the funded number. But over the years, actually, very few have been taken up by non-locals. And if non-locals take up those places, they have to pay the full cost. Chairman, as for the other questions, okay, please continue. Maybe I can ask Ms. Lee to supplement. First of all, on the policy of non-local students, we want to benefit locals by making our universities more internationalized. An internationalized campus is good for our local students without leaving Hong Kong. In a culturally diverse environment, local students are benefited. In the past 10 years, we have seen improvements in this regard. Some institutions have admitted non-local and non-mainland students taking up half of the quota. We hope more can be done so that we can have more non-local students who do not come from the mainland to make the institutions truly internationalized. And for the encouragement of integration and interaction, we encourage institutions, local students to react more closely with non-local students. With this policy and also the policies introduced by the universities, we hope we can achieve the goal of internationalization. Deputy Chairman, we have two topics. First, non-JUPAS, and second, non-locals. Let's not mix up the two issues.
Let's focus first on the non-JUPAS route. Actually, most of them students going through that route are actually local students as well. In some disciplines, the proportion of that is, in fact, too high. In an oral question of the council, I raised a question. I got some information which I found to be useless. So that's why I requested for additional information. So today we have received this large pile of new information. I don't know how many pages there are in this pile because there is no page number in that pile of information. It would be difficult for us to refer to this paper because it doesn't have any page numbers. Now for this pile of information, it lays out the situation of non-local students and non-JUPAS route students. I think the information is quite useful. Let's turn to the first 8 tables. Now, because the table doesn't have any number for non-JUPAS route, the largest number of students is found in the Bachelor of Architecture in Hong Kong U, Biomedicine, and internal medicine over 20%, and they can be as high as 30%. And also CUHK, law, medicine, and finance over 20%. And some as much as 30%. City U also, Bachelor of Laws, over 16%. Which means that many of them don't go through the JUPAS route, but rather non-JUPAS route. Local students studying IB and other courses to enter university. So there is a common characteristic among these disciplines. These disciplines are more popular in the community. Many students are aspiring for these to enter into these disciplines. Now, for other courses, the number of students going through the non-JUPAS route may be as low as 1% or 2%. Is this a coincidence? No, I don't think that's the case. Why is it that this kind of situation appears? Why is it that for the faculties that I mentioned that they're taking so many non-JUPAS students? Many secondary principals and teachers told me that when the university admits students, they tend to admit non-JUPAS students, especially for popular departments and disciplines. Now, can we make the system fairer, i.e. local students can or more local students can enter these university departments through JUPAS? Secretary. I don't see any reason why institutions would like to take in more non-JUPAS students. And the Vice Chairman mentioned raising the ratio of JUPAS students admitted to these popular disciplines. I don't know what you mean by raising the ratio to a reasonable level. Now, as for non-JUPAS students, they just don't take in, say, IB courses. Some of them are from sub-degree programs and other overseas qualifications. The paper says here. Now, major overseas qualifications here, and that the sub-degree qualifications are distinct in the table. So there are two different categories in the table. Well, let's look at table number 1. In non-JUPAS route, there are 3 categories. Major overseas qualifications, sub-degree qualifications, others. Well, others may refer to those who switch from one institution to another. For the several subjects that you mentioned, they are relatively more popular. So relatively more students would like to enroll in these subjects, even if they have already started their university life in a different subject. Maybe that explains why there is more admission under the non-JUPAS route. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Well, when we talk about internationalization, I think we are talking about mainlandization, because 90% of the international students are from the mainland. I think the government is just deluding itself. The government says that you are admitting a lot of international students, whereas in fact they are mainland students. We are from the same country, Hong Kong and other parts of mainland. So how can we call that international students? Can we exclude the mainland students from the international students? If that is done, then we see that the internationalization policy has failed totally. Now, 80% of the students of the non-local students are from the mainland. For many researches and teaching work. They are undertaken by the research postgraduates. Now, if 80% of the postgraduates are non-local students, their interest and their inclinations and preferences are different from local students. So in the university, in effect, we have this publish or perish approach, just like the U.S. Now, the teachers are focused on writing papers, whereas the teaching work is delegated to the research postgraduates. Now, if a university has 80% of its postgraduates coming from out of Hong Kong, how can they undertake or take on such teaching work? That would not be good enough. So this is going to create a problem. We already lack the incentive to undertake local research on local issues, and the situation that I talked about makes it more difficult. So will the administration consider putting a ceiling to the number of non-local students in the research postgraduate programs? Under Secretary, when we look at the figures, we still have room that for institutions to admit local research postgraduates. They can still do so. We still have the room. But if we set a ceiling to the number of non-local research postgraduates, that goes against international practices, and that would also affect the research capability of the institutions. Now, say if we don't have enough local research postgraduates and they're not allowed to bring in non-local ones, then the overall research team will shrink. And that will also affect their research achievement or capability. Now, say if, the local students can't get into research postgraduates, that may be considered putting a cap. But then the situation is not like this today. So if we still have spare room for local students, then I don't think there is a need to put a ceiling on non-local research postgraduate students. Now, so many mainland students have come to Hong Kong. Why is there such a few local RPG? Now, if local RPG are to compete with mainland RPG, they may be at a disadvantage. They have less experience, and their academic qualifications may also be lower. Now, I teach in the university of myself. If I enroll in a non-local RPG, then I will be in a better position because they can write essays for me and so on. But if I enroll in a local RPG, I will have to spend more time myself in doing the work. And also in terms of building relationship with the mainland, and for the teachers' own career advancement, and also taking into account the international factor and so on. So all these will put the local RPG at a disadvantage. Now, I teach university. I welcome basically students from all over the world. We should be as open as we can. But then the question now is the mix is 80-20, and it is quite unbalanced. I think the administration should face up to this issue. And Ms. Lee, please. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. For the RPG program number, while the number far exceeds the demand from local students, even if we take them all in, we still have spare capacity. So in paragraph 17, the success rate of local applicants is far higher than that of the non-local counterparts. So local applicants are not affected in any way by non-local applicants. mainland students have good academic qualifications. So even for places outside Hong Kong, the mainland applicants have proved very successful in applying for RPG places. For the non-local RPG, we have students from over 70 jurisdictions. It's just the mainland has the highest proportion. Dr. Zhang asked about whether we should put a cap on the non-local RPG. In the 90s, we did have a ratio, and at that time, that was capped at 20%, and later that was capped at 1/3. Now, after the review later on, we think that we must enhance or boost our research capabilities. So we suggested that the ceiling be abolished, and the government, after consulting the public, adopted this proposal. Hence, there is no ceiling at the moment. Next one, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Dr. Fernando Zhang mentioned that about the quality of RPG. That is an important issue. And in many overseas jurisdictions, they are also charging non-local RPG differently from local RPG. I have also studied as an RPG in an overseas jurisdiction, and even if I was doing a research there, I still had to pay the tuition fee for an overseas or non-local student. And that is an appropriate type of measure. Has the EDB made an assessment of whether it is true that local students don't want to pursue the route of RPG, or really the top students, local students, are pursuing RPG overseas? Do we know about the situation here? If that is the case, and that is not a good situation. To my understand, our top-notch students may go overseas to pursue RPG. So locally, the leftover of the students may have to compete with the very top-notch students from other parts of the world. So is this the picture that we are facing here? What is the actual situation of the students in terms of the ways they pursued academically? How is it like? I think the administration should encourage local students to pursue RPG studies. Do we have policies to encourage students to do that? Or we are leaving it freely to the students to make their own decisions? If we don't have such a policy, then we won't be able to help or encourage local students to pursue research PG programs. So we'd like to hear from the EDB.
Undersecretary, well, I understand that every year some local students would get enrolled as postgraduate students overseas. Maybe I can ask the Deputy Secretary to see if we can find the figures. We also offer scholarship to encourage people to enroll in doctorate programs. Anything from the Deputy Secretary? I don't have the figures with me, but I do know many local undergraduates would like to go overseas after graduation. Do you have any policy to encourage to encourage students to become postgraduate students. We have an incentive scheme for doctoral programs for local and for overseas students. Well, that's not what I have in mind. I just want you to do more to provide incentive to local students. Yes, we do have such a scheme which is available to local students. We know local students may take into account many factors in considering their future development. Or you may also offer incentives by asking them to work as teaching assistants and provide them with other support measures. Can you provide more incentives for these students to remain in Hong Kong? Dr. Fasila Leung, I have to declare my interest. I'm a law teacher in City U. I want to say that I don't quite agree with Dr. Fernando Zhang. From what I've heard, it seems that he has a strong view about the presence of so many mainland students. We should be careful about the atmosphere that such comments may create. We shouldn't exaggerate things. In the past 10 odd years, among the students I taught, most of them were local students, but quite a few were so-called non-JUPAS students. They study in high schools in the US or Canada. And I have had students coming back to Hong Kong from Belgium, France, and Singapore. And then some of the undergraduate law students were graduates in another discipline. Well, two students came to see me today, one from Singapore, one from the mainland, telling me that they would enter into a joint venture. They are going to set up an international firm. So they, through their studies in Hong Kong, they have been able to establish a network for themselves. And for those non-locals who are not mainlanders, they are very interested in what is happening on the mainland, and Hong Kong is a gateway. But Hong Kong students are more interested in what's going on in other countries. So we must make sure that Hong Kong institutions are competitive and attractive to mainlanders and other non-locals. And I know that institutions admit students on the basis of merit. So if a local student is very interested in a particular field and is capable, the chance of admission is high. But for some, they are just trying to delay the working. And some are interested in research, and they would return to the university after completing the undergraduate programs for a long time. There are many topics. For talented local students, they are very capable. There is quality of research is very high. So it depends on the abilities of individual students. I'm not in favor of putting a quota for any category. it's good to encourage more the non-local students for the cross-fertilization purposes. I know that we have met many mainland postgraduate students in the science field, and they have demonstrated, these non-local students have demonstrated very good research abilities. They will not get admission simply because they are from the mainland or from Canada, for that matter. And these postgraduate students have contributed a lot to our tertiary sector. And some have some are from Taiwan when they or from other countries. When they return to their own countries, they become someone knowledgeable about China. So we should not have fixed quota for local students. Instead, we should try to encourage them to do research. You should encourage people to publish. For example, you can give more recognition to the research published in Chinese. Mr. Leung Yu-chung. Well, I think in terms of admission, we should look at the ability, the qualifications, the merits, but not the nationality. That is understood. But we need to consider the question of over-concentration of the background of our tertiary students. This may affect the work of our universities. And also the implications for local undergraduates when more non-locals from a particular background are doing the teaching. As Dr. Fernando Zhang has said, he doesn't mind that we have a Canadian, a U.S. citizens or Swiss doing the teaching at the same time. But the question is, we are having everything done by mainlanders. It's a question of moderation. We should not go for extremes. Now 80% of them are from the mainland. So where's the balance? So Ms. Priscilla Leung's point is off the mark. We're not talking about the same issues. And I have a question about the subvented places. I don't quite understand what's the point in paragraph 12. And that is all non-local undergraduate students pay tuition fee at a level that is at least sufficient to recover all additional direct costs. And that's the nook number 3. In the 2013-14 academic year, the levels of tuition fee for non-local students in the UGC-funded undergraduate programs range from 100,000 to 135,000 per annum, whereas the tuition fee for local students is $42,100 per annum. What do you mean by this phrase that is at least sufficient to recover all additional direct costs? So is the 100,000 inclusive of the 42,100 or exclusive of the local fees? Ms. Lee? When a non-local student is enrolled in an undergraduate program in Hong Kong, the student pays 100,000 to 135,000. So it's basically sufficient to cover the costs, the direct costs, or additional direct costs. What we are trying to say is that we are not subsidizing non-local undergraduates. So they are not spending taxpayers' money. And then in paragraph 12, we also make the point that there is no no encroachment, so to speak, no taking away of places for local students. So there's no public subsidy. So do you cover the full cost? Are you saying that the Hong Kong SAR government doesn't provide any subsidy at all? Well, the premises, the lecture halls are already there. And if you have one additional non-local students doing the same, do you want the student to pay all the construction costs? Well, so you're talking about the marginal cost. But this is a game of words. If I haven't misunderstood you, you are saying that you have been telling people that the cost of an undergraduate place is $200,000. So you are charging them about half of that cost. And if you discount the cost of providing the seating, the lecture hall, I don't know whether when you talk about direct costs, you are referring to all these. So can you clarify this point? Is the actual cost $200,000? And if you charge them $100,000, how can you say there's no subsidy? Well, if you look at this financially, we have fixed costs, sunk costs, and there are variable costs. The fixed costs will include the building, the expenditure, or the expenses that in relation to the use of premises. You have to switch on the lights, whether you have 100 students or just one. So when we calculate the direct costs, we are saying that when we have this additional non-local student, how much is needed? So can you tell us, for local undergraduate students, how much subsidy is provided? Can you clarify your question again? For local undergraduate students, can you tell us, for local undergraduate students, what's the subsidy per head? Counting everything, every item of cost, and that is the unit cost, is more than $200,000 per student. And for that, the local student has to pay $42,100 in tuition fees. And if they are from families with modest means, then there's also the question of grant and loan. Undersecretary? Chairman, if we have to calculate the sums, well, we need to take at the bigger picture. There's a total cost. Okay, please get organized. We have the next member raising his questions. Mr. Paul, Chair. I don't think the focus of today's meeting is on undergraduates, but rather postgraduate programs. Some members have criticized that the ratio taken up by mainlanders is too high, 80%. Well, it has to do with geography. And of course, in terms of the population of undergraduate students, China ranks among the top countries. So that's the broad background. According to the Deputy Secretary, that there was a 30% ceiling some 10 years ago.
The paper also says that in some overseas jurisdictions like the UK, they have 40 to 50% non-local postgraduate students, and some countries even reach 60%. So what should be the policy in Hong Kong? How should Hong Kong be oriented in terms of our policy? Should we be just satisfying the needs of local students in terms of quantity? Or should we focus on enhancing our quality by bringing in more international students? we should have value for money in terms of the provision of services. Should this be one of our objectives as well? And some institutions would like to have more quality research postgraduates to boost their status. And in the long term, should Hong Kong be aiming to enhance our overall research capability by attracting more international talents? Take Singapore as an example. For this reason, they would like to take in more international students, and they are offering them special favorable treatment as well. Now, say for some other developed countries, they are also attracting more overseas talents to sort of bring in good elements to their culture. So all these are factors that we should take on board. So what's the administration's inclination? In terms of the list of factors that I mentioned, what is the ultimate objective that you want to achieve in terms of admitting students for RPG programs? Our main objective for RPG programs is to enhance Hong Kong's research capability in our tertiary education institutions. So that's why we need to attract top-notch research postgraduates to Hong Kong. If we do have such talents, then we would be able to bring good impact on the professors and the teaching and the research quality. So if we do that, the overall standards of tertiary education can also be boosted. So we would try to stick to the principle of merit-based selection. This is our principal goal. Compared to what's in the past in Hong Kong, you already explained that. Singapore competes fiercely with Hong Kong in terms of every aspect. Have you considered or taken reference from Singapore in terms of the ratio of non-local postgraduate students that they are taking in? Ms. Lee? In Appendix 4, we have compared Hong Kong to countries in the U.S. and European. What about neighboring countries? In Asia, in Singapore or Australia, they have policies to attract the top talents to the country. They have full scholarships to attract them to go over. Similarly, Hong Kong does have such scholarships. In terms of the admission ratio, well, we know, to our understanding, they don't have a ceiling. Well, are they like Hong Kong, where 80% of our research postgraduates are from the mainland? And what is the situation in Singapore? How many mainland students? We don't have the figures on hand. Can you supply those figures later on? Okay, we are done with the first round of questioning. I do have a question myself. Secretary, in paragraph 17 of your paper, you said that in the 2012-13 academic year, there were around 1,020 local applicants for RPG programs, and 531 of these local applicants were eventually admitted, which accounted for 52.1%. Now, have you considered why there are so many applicants and then so few people were admitted? What are the reasons? Are the qualifications not good enough? What is the threshold of the institutions too high? It seems to me that the admission rate is on the low side. Have you studied into that? Why? Another question has to do with Mr. Leung's question as well, the cost. You haven't been able to give us a satisfactory answer. Can you give us a written reply after the meeting on those figures in terms of the unit cost and so on? Now, second round, there are 6 members who would like to speak. We should finish the meeting by 6:30, so I would like to seek your consent to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. We will end the meeting at 6:45. 2 questions from me. Have you studied why so many people were not admitted to the RPG programs? And second, would you be giving us a written reply on the figures? Dr. Richard Armour, please.
Thanks for the question, Chairman. I don't have a detailed study, but anecdotally I can give you 2 reasons. A number withdrew before following through their application, either because they had a better offer elsewhere, sometimes overseas, but they certainly withdrew before following through their application, and a number just didn't meet the threshold. I'm unaware of systematic sector-wide analyses, but certainly one of the universities where I worked, those were the detailed studies that they did. A significant proportion withdrew, and a significant proportion just simply across the departments and the faculties didn't meet their basic threshold. So of the 50%, that was the primary reasons, but I don't know of a sector-wide study.
Has all along the percentage been so low over the years? Perhaps we can supplement the figures later on. Well, compared to the non-locals, this is already a high figure. Now, we're talking about that 1,000 local applicants, 500 were eventually admitted. You haven't given us the reason why. So I'm just asking whether this has been the case all along and you're so used to it. Well, in terms of the figures, we'll go back and retrieve some figures for you. Just like the situation in admitting undergraduates, and I think the institutions do have their autonomy in admitting students. As for the cost, second question. Well, perhaps I will have to go back and provide the statistics later on. Well, I can talk about the principles here. Well, just use 2 minutes. Among the 15,000 students, when we calculated the costs, all the costs have been taken in. Now, if we want to take in extra non-local costs, all we have to recover from them is additional direct costs. Because for the other costs, even if we're not admitting them, the costs have already been incurred. So that's why we are trying to recover from them only the additional direct costs. Well, second round, 6 members, Dr. Helena Wong, Dr. Kenneth, Hon IP Kin-yuen, Priscilla Leung, Fernando Zhang, Leung Yu-chung. 3 minutes, including answers and questions. Dr. Helena Wong. I hope that the administration can give us this piece of information in terms of the resources and subsidy, undergraduate and research postgraduate programs, locals and non-locals, the direct and indirect subsidy given to them. Well, your paper doesn't talk about money at all. You talk about 4% and whether the tuition fees can cover the unit cost and so on. But then when it comes to the research postgraduate programs, what is the unit cost? Well, as far as I understand, it's $500,000 per year. So 3 years, $1.5 million, and 4 years, $2 million in total. So this is going to be paid out of taxpayers' pockets. So our question here is, we have so many eligible students for the undergraduate programs, but some of them have been turned away and they have to study in self-financed programs. And then at the same time, the government is being generous, and you are spending a subsidy of $500,000 per year on each research postgraduate student. This is a question that we have to look into. Mr. Paul Chair talked about the situation in Singapore. I have also looked at information relating to Singapore. They also take in non-local students. The tuition fee that they have to pay for the non-local students many more times than the local students. In the UK, they also admit non-local RPG students, if they are non-local people, they have to pay a much higher tuition fee. So I want the administration to explain how come is it that we are so generous? Whoever comes to Hong Kong from whatever place to study in RPG, then taxpayers have to shoulder their tuition fees. And then at the same time, you don't want to increase the first year, first degree places. This is most infuriating. So can you give us the figures? What resources are we devoting to non-local students, giving them sort of special favors on top of local students? Another question is about 80% of the RPG students are non-locals, and that affects seriously the nurturing of local research postgraduate talents, and local research will also be adversely affected. Well, nobody will write essays on researches about Hong Kong issues. 80% of them are from outside. They will write essays or papers on non-local issues, mainland issues. And it's all because you haven't put a ceiling to the number of non-local students, and you don't have an alternative mode of subsidy, and you're killing the local research capability. I don't think we should mix up the local, the undergraduate or postgraduate programs. We shouldn't be lumping them all together in our discussions, because they are doing different things in the universities. So I don't think that we should save up on the postgraduate programs and then you spend them on undergraduate programs. I don't think that's the right way of doing it. As for the unit cost, I think we should give you the figures later on. And as for postgraduate students, non-local students, all the costs have to be, additional direct costs will have to be recovered through the tuition fees. In the House Committee last Friday, when we talked about the population policy, I reminded Mrs. Carrie Lam, the Chief Secretary, that we should have a good positioning for Hong Kong in the international arena. When we were at the colonial days, we didn't have talk about internationalization and so on. The CS replied to me, and she said that she knew a lot about embassies. She knew a lot of embassies in Hong Kong, and she attended to these issues. And my question is how we can still maintain the Hong Kong's special position in the international stage. So individual institutions or faculties will have over 50% of non-local students. I think we need to review the policy of internationalizing our institutions. So I think you should take away the 4% and then include them back into the local approved student number. I think that the 4% should be taken away. I hope that Mr. Young can do that. Second, for individual discipline and individual institution, the non-local can take up as 20 to 40% of all student numbers. So should you be taking a close look at the situation to see if it goes against your policy intention? Now, if you want to internationalize the campus, why don't you do more on the exchange programs? Well, they can say, come and live and study here for 1 semester, on 2 semester, and so on. Well, that's the easiest way to do it. And we should not be arguing about whether there are too many non-local students. There are too many mainland students, and so on. I think I don't want to go on having this kind of debate.
Let's have more exchange students. Thank you, Chairman. Under Secretary. Well, I thank the member for his comments. Well, we are all in favor of exchange programs, and that's also where we are going to attach importance to as well. And of course, the numbers vary in different departments for different programs because they are attractive to different students in different ways. So in some programs we have more non-locals. You have to look at the incentives that you're offering the institutions. They're getting more non-locals and receive higher fees. Well, if the institutions can cope after the non-local has paid the additional direct costs without affecting their operation, then I would think the situation, to me, is acceptable. Of course, there's always room for taking a harder look at the developing scene. I was talking about the non-JUPAS route. For some popular programs, they admit a relatively higher percentage of non-JUPAS students. I hope the Bureau can pay attention to that. And the institutions should be reminded to ensure better arrangements and look into the reasons why for some particular programs there are so many more non-JUPAS students. As for non-local students, it's the other side of the coin, and the other side is the problems faced by local students. There's an imbalance. For local students, the imbalance is more acute. Starting from 2008 to 2012, for local students' share in RGP programs dropped from 41% to 45%, 26%, 24% in 5 years. It's almost halved in terms of percentage. So there are fewer and fewer local RGP postgraduate students. So what are the reasons for this phenomenon? Maybe the Bureau or UGC can look into this. While we have more and more mainland RGP students, non-local students, we have fewer and fewer local RGP students. Can something be done? As Mr. Wu Chi-wai has said, can we provide some financial incentive to encourage more local students to enroll in RGP programs? Dr. Helena Wong asked for disincentive to reduce the number of mainland RGP students, while at the same time we provide incentive to attract RGP students from other places so that we can have a more balanced mix to the benefit of Hong Kong. In other jurisdictions, they do not ask for they do not adjust the numbers on admission requirements, but on the basis of tuition fees. And we will be interested to know more about Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. There are many Taiwanese students going abroad for postgraduate study, but there are also a lot of local Taiwanese students staying on for postgraduate education. So I hope you can also track the developments. Chairman, your comments will be referred to the institutions for their attention. If we just look at the ratio, well, it's been dropping. And 24,000, 2,400 down to 1,600. But what about the absolute numbers of RGP places and so on? Dr. Priscilla Leung. Sorry, Chairman. I want to add to what I've said. We should ask ourselves how many students, local students, opt to go overseas for postgraduate programs. We attract students from the mainland, from other countries, and our students are attracted to overseas countries for postgraduate education perhaps because they would like to have a foreign qualification, and it's good for their future. So we have to look at the prospects that they can get, and that is to say whether they can get jobs after graduation. I know for mainland students, getting a local Hong Kong qualification is going to help their employment on the mainland. For foreign students, they become a Chinese expert in their country. And for local students, what they can do is to be in the research field in local universities. What I don't want to see is to nurture a group of frustrated postgraduates. You have to spend 6 precious years to get a doctorate degree. And what would happen next? We have to consider whether this is good for the future. Well, a master's degree takes a year or 2 years. But if you spend 6 years for a doctorate degree and cannot get any job after graduation, that's a lot of frustration. We have to consider all these. Instead of asking for a certain ratio, for a certain quota for local students, because some local students just opt for overseas education. I think we should try to encourage mutual understanding. Don't do anything to discriminate against mainlanders. I think the important thing is to make sure that these non-local students can help our development. We can certainly find ways to attract people to conduct studies on Hong Kong issues, even though they are not local people. Dr. Fernando Chiang. I've been teaching in a university for more than 10 years, and I once studied overseas. So I don't have any tendency to reject non-local students, because I was a beneficiary because I was admitted to a foreign university. And now let's look at the subvented sector, not the self-financed sector, because it is really about money, and the development is not good. But let's just talk about the subvented sector. When 80% of the RPG students are from the mainland, and then only 20% of the places are taken by local students, there's a cause for you to look into the reasons. Our universities judge the performance of their staff, teaching staff, solely on publication, and these mainland students become cheap labor for local teaching staff. They are very good. These mainlanders, I have to add, they are very good. So are we setting up research programs, research postgraduate schools for this? And after a few years, these mainland students got a good degree, postgraduate degree, and they proceed to other things on the mainland. Is that the purpose of setting up our postgraduate schools? Is this the purpose? Providing our professors with stronger teams comprising non-locals? It's about their personal career development, not about helping Hong Kong. It's 80-20. The Deputy Secretary has given you the figures. They're real. You should look into this. Any response? Yes, certainly we can take a look again. As I've said, the point has already been made. A capable local student who has the right interest to be engaged in postgraduate research. The chance is there. Their chance will not be taken away just because we have admitted non-locals. I want to talk about exchange students. Some of my ex-students went to the Chinese university, and then they got the chance to go on an exchange program. Yes, that's truly an international experience. I hope the Undersecretary, you would do what you have said. You would provide more resources for exchange programs. And then returning to the other point, the cost, the unit cost of 200,000. When you want to increase tuition fees, you will quote the figure of 200,000. You will say that recovery rate is just 80% or 20%, so there's a need to increase tuition fees. Well, in recent years, you didn't increase tuition fees, but in the past, when you wanted to increase fees, you would quote the full cost. But now, when it comes to tuition fee of non-local students, you would say that something should not be counted towards the full cost. So you talk about the full cost when it's to your advantage, and when it's not, you don't talk about the full cost. So can we have a consistent way of calculating the cost? Are you calculating the cost in different ways for locals vis-a-vis non-locals? For local subvented institutions, they are there to meet the needs of local students. So we look at the full cost in cost accounting. That we include, for example, the fixed cost, the construction cost. But the non-locals are not our clients, so to speak. Our universities are not built for them. They are so-called additional students. So we'll look at the additional costs incurred by admitting these additional students. So the two concepts reflect that we attach more importance to local students. Well, if you are talking about additional students, you should charge them nothing. They are just additional. You have already incurred all the costs involved. You're not going to hire another professor to teach the non-locals. You should waive everything. You should not collect anything, any fee. But there are other costs, such as hostels and so on. So what are we talking about? Full costs or additional costs? Well, if Mr. Leung is saying that we should not collect any tuition fee, then we are doing quite well by collecting the fees. How can you calculate the direct costs? How can you apportion costs of hiring the same professor for local students? The lecture room has been, the cost of the lecture room, for example, has been fully accounted for by local students. How do you come up with this figure, this tuition fee of $100,000? And you're saying that there's no additional subsidy. What do you mean by no additional subsidy?
Well, there is a pressure to adjust upward the tuition fee for local students. Well, your views have been clearly heard, I think, and it's time's up. And I think the administration should explain why you adopt the approach of recovering additional direct costs and not the full cost. I think I'll declare the meeting adjourned, and the next meeting is for the 18th of March. Thank you.